Hi, I'm Reverend Patricia Adams Farmer, pastor of Millersburg Christian Church, and the title of my sermon today is Waiting, Wonderful or Dreadful? It's based on Matthew chapter 25, verses 1 through 12. As we approach Veterans Day, I think of my late father, a World War II vet who never liked standing in lines. And once on vacation, we were in a queue to get tickets to some popular sightseeing tour, and he seemed really uncomfortable. And I asked him why, and he said, in the Navy, the rhythm of our lives was hurry up and wait, hurry up and wait. We had to hurry to get into line and then wait and wait and wait. My dad was quite young in the war, just out of high school, so I imagine all that hurry up and wait had to be really hard on a teenager. As we grow older, we are called to wait on all that is important in life, whether winning a war or getting our degree from school or having a child or waiting. Waiting simply matures us and helps us to think about what is important, or it can. But waiting is never easy. Recently, many of our citizens have waited in long lines to vote. And this past week, we all waited for days, biting our nails for the election to be over. We are waiting for an end to COVID. We are all waiting for something. Some of us are just waiting for God, the name of the British sitcom about elderly folks in a retirement center. Have you ever noticed how waiting for something or someone can be either wonderful or dreadful? To a large degree, the difference is determined by what you are waiting for. Waiting for your bride to come down the aisle of the church can be wonderful. Waiting to learn if your loved one has cancer can be dreadful. Waiting for a vacation, wonderful. Waiting for a root canal, dreadful. Waiting to purchase your dream house, wonderful. Waiting to be audited by the IRS, absolutely dreadful. As you probably know, there is a lot of waiting that takes place in church. And I'm not just speaking of waiting for the sermon to be over. We will soon be entering Advent, which is all about waiting for the Christ child to be born. At the other end of things, we wait for Jesus to come again in whatever way we imagine or interpret that. Bernard of Clairvaux, the 12th century abbot and theologian, wrote eloquently of three Advents. First, the Advent of Christmas, waiting for Jesus to be born. The last is the Advent at the end of the age as we await Christ's return, whether we think of that spiritually or literally. But there is yet another Advent in between, a middle Advent, according to Bernard of Clairvaux, the one in between the beginning and the end, and that is the everyday arrival of Jesus. The knock at the door, the still small voice, the lonely prisoner, the hungry mother, the weary refugee, the migrant worker, the asylum seeker. Jesus comes in all these forms. And in other ways too, especially when darkness is all around us and we need to experience the coming of Christ in a form of healing and transformation. We light candles when someone is sick or when we need to hold a vigil. All of this is waiting for Christ's fresh incarnation in our lives. However we think of Christ coming again, it all involves waiting. We have a choice in the quality of that waiting. If we are awake and prepared, which is what the parable of the bridesmaids is all about, it can be wonderful and transforming and meaningful. But we have to keep the oil going in our lamps so they never burn out. And in this waiting, often in the darkness, we sometimes feel burned out. But even then, we must refuel our lamps with faith, hope, and love. In this moment in U.S. history, we all wait for the transformation of our country. No matter whether your candidate has won or lost the election, we know the healing of the deep fractures of division cannot be transformed instantaneously. Healing is a process. We all have to wait, but it is not passive waiting. Our passage today suggests that we have to be prepared to have plenty of oil for our lamps. We have to wait actively, mindfully, and with our inner lights burning brightly if we want to be part of this national healing and global healing and planetary healing. This is wonderful waiting. If we are not prepared, not thinking ahead, the consequences could be dreadful. Thinking of the next generation is part of that responsibility. What kind of country and values do we want to leave when Christ comes for us at the end of our own lives? What kind of planet do we want to leave our children and grandchildren? This is no time to run out of fuel for our lamps. We need to hold vigil for Christ to be welcomed back in the form of justice, kindness, love, and care for creation. The foolish bridesmaids in our story today are chastised, not because they fail to watch, and not because they fall asleep. All of them fall asleep, the wise and the foolish. Rather, they are chastised because they didn't bring enough lamp oil to keep their lamps burning during the bridegroom's delay. They weren't prepared to wait. Waiting does not just involve patience and passivity, but preparation and personal responsibility. Waiting for the pandemic to end is perhaps our most immediate trial. It feels dreadful, and it is dreadful, and we are not prepared. And so we have to ask, how can we welcome Christ back during this health crisis? According to health experts, we are about to enter a very long, dark, and painful winter, meaning the worst phase and the most deadly phase of the pandemic, it's about to come, according to Dr. Birx. Or as Dr. Fauci says, we're about to experience a whole lot of hurt. A whole lot of hurt. Because we as a nation are not prepared, not adequately, for what is to come. Too many in our country have just gotten tired of waiting. Now we are reaping the consequences of not facing reality. But we still have an opportunity to relight our lamps, to be part of the light of healing that we know will come if we keep vigil with patience and care for one another. But how do we wait for something like the end of COVID, even while we know the worst may yet be still to come? How can we make the waiting an opportunity for the wonderment of Christ coming to us on a daily basis? We might want to refuel our lamps with the oil of spiritual introspection. We need to ask ourselves, what are our values? What are the values of Jesus? What really matters at a time like this? Getting the clan together for Thanksgiving, or saving lives and beating the virus? There's a true story that comes from the sinking of the Titanic. A frightened woman found her place in a lifeboat that was about to be lowered into the raging North Atlantic. She suddenly thought of something she needed, so she asked permission to return to her stateroom before they cast off. She was granted 3 minutes or they would leave without her. She ran across the deck that was already slanted at a dangerous angle. She raced through the gambling room with all the money that had rolled to one side ankle deep. She came into her stateroom and quickly pushed aside her diamond rings and her expensive bracelets and necklaces as she reached to the shelf above her bed and grabbed 3 small oranges. 3 small oranges. She quickly found her way back to the lifeboat and got in. Now that seems incredible because 30 minutes earlier she would have not chosen a crate of oranges over the smallest diamond. But death had boarded the Titanic. One blast of its awful breath had transformed all values. Instantaneously, priceless things had become worthless. Worthless things had become priceless. And in that moment, she preferred 3 small oranges to a crate of diamonds. There are events in life which have the power to transform the way we look at the world. The woman on the sinking of the Titanic understood, in the light of her current circumstances, that she must make preparations for living on a lifeboat. She must get ready to wait. to wait it out until help arrives. Her values changed. We must ask ourselves, what is the most important thing right now during COVID? Money or saving lives? During these days of waiting and worrying and grieving, may we turn dreadful waiting into wonderful waiting by keeping the oil in our lamps going strong, constantly refueling ourselves with faith, hope, and love. May we invite Christ into our grief, our anger, and our anxiety, so we can transform our dread into the wonder of Christ's healing presence. Amen.